All right, so let me do a quick overview of how this is all going to work, and then I'll let everyone introduce themselves. So first of all, my name is Eric Simon. I'm the Kickstarter coordinator for Ulysses North America. Welcome to the Torg Eternity Nile Empire live chat, our first one. Just so everyone knows, once we get to the question section, pretty much everything just had... people are saying... Everybody else can hear me, right? Because John, Christopher...
I can hear you.
John Christopher is having some audio issues.
Sorry, man. It's a personal problem.
So once we get to the Q&A section, I'm going to be focusing on the... hey, welcome, Jack. We're going to be focusing on the pre-programmed questions first, and I'm just going to go in the order they were submitted, so I'm going to go bottom up on those. And if there's relevant discussion that happens in the chat during a question, then I'll go ahead and do that. When we're doing the Q&A also, I will be reading out loud whatever relevant comment or question we're referring to, because when we export the video later, it doesn't include the chat. So, so it's important for people watching on YouTube for me to actually say what we're answering.
Also, we're all a bunch of rule breakers, so we're going to be looking at the chat and probably screwing everything up. So sorry, Eric.
Yeah, no, it's fine. These are my intentions.
And a shout out to Keiji Matsuko from Japan, all the way.
Yes.
Probably our most distant joiner. That's awesome.
That's very weird, John. I don't know why you would hear some of us but not all of us. Yeah.
All right.
It's very strange.
Should we continue the intros?
Yeah. Boy, I can't imagine, like, there's so little that I can do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll poke at settings while you guys try. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right, cool. I'll go ahead and go. I'm Darrell Hayhurst. I'm the current steward of Torg Eternity. Trying to get these things out on time and to you guys, so it's all my fault, is what I like to say. I got my fingers in just about everything, and so you'll probably be hearing from me a lot as we go. I'll try and shut up and let everybody else talk, though. So we'll do Deanna next.
All right, so yeah, I'm Deanna Gilbert, and I'm the author of the Nile Empire source book and the social media coordinator for Torg for Ulysses. And I am sort of the developer for the Relics of Power Redux adventure.
Oh, I'm Greg Gorden. Hung around on the original Torg, and decided to re-up and dabble in this one. I wrote one of the Delphi missions, the Serial Gambit, and I've got a couple of bad ideas I need to run by a few folks, but yeah.
Pitch him here in front of a giant audience forever.
The only thing I want to do is, in front of the giant audience, put peer pressure on Mr. Reeves to run his adventure at GameStorm so I can play it. Right?
Oh. Yeah, I would love to. I'm Brian Reeves. I am the co-author, along with Darrell, for the Fires of Ra mega adventure that is part of this Kickstarter.
And so Brian's been kind of our workhorse on a lot of adventures. You'll see him on tons of stuff, including at least one of the acts of the Relics of Power redo. So.
Yep.
And we just got to say, even though he didn't say it, Greg Gorden, role-playing superstar.
All right. So at any point, what I figure is if these questions spark further discussion, all four of you can feel free to just take it in the direction that that you want to take it. So this first one, I think, is a pretty good overview question for the Nile Empire. Charles says, it seems like there's a wealth of pulp novels, TV, movie, and serials out there that would be an excellent resource for GMs to draw upon. Will there be a reference section, and dare I hope web links of any kind, for the enterprising GM to rummage through for inspiration? So with that, I'd kind of like to expand on that even, not just from a practical standpoint, will there be a list of references? I do want that answer. But also, for each of you, kind of what about the Nile Empire inspires you?
Yeah, so on the production side, we've got a certain number of pages, and as much as I'd love to throw those references in, we just don't have room. Now,
I kind of wrote too much.
Yeah, no, but as a web supplement, we could do that. So it won't be coming fast, but we can totally do that because I've got a wall full of serials and old pulp fiction that I adore and would love to share with people.
Same.
What I think would be great is if one of the things that we could say is some of our favorite pulp references that probably get either shout outs or at least pushed you in certain directions on the Nile Empire. Mine is Ace Drummond, which is I think one of the greatest serials ever of all time by Eddie Rickenbacker, who wrote it, and it's got everything, a singing pulp pilot, set in the South Pacific, a Mongolian super cop. I mean, it's the best.
Deanna?
So I don't really have a lot of inspirations from the original pulps, but The Mummy is one of my favorite movies of all time. And if there is not a more perfect movie for Torg in the Nile Empire, it's that. And I to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if because they saw the Nile Empire, because it just matches so perfectly.
Yeah, it was an inspiration during the writing phase, for sure.
Brian, since you've started, go ahead.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, some the obvious ones, Indiana Jones, of course, movies. I also am a big fan of The Rocketeer, the Disney movie from 1992. That was an inspiration during part of this adventure as well.
Yeah, we're a
Okay.
little connectivity light on Brian. You went that one.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Greg, I bet you got
then
some
we'll move
great
on.
sources too.
Yeah,
Yes.
I believe it was called The Trail of the Scorpion, because actually the serial that Ray Wininger showed me to pitch me that the Nile Empire should not be low-powered supers. It should be this pulp stuff. And the first 2 episodes I watched, I was like, and by the third one, I got it. And it was so over the top, just so continuous. You did not stop for any logic chain. You did not stop for any character reason. You just drove through. And so that over-the-top action style is what has always appealed to me about the Nile Empire. So.
And though it's a little high-powered, if you guys have ever seen the Captain Marvel serial, it has my favorite cliffhanger and resolution of all time, where Captain Marvel has been like kind of punched in the face, and he falls on a conveyor belt that's heading for this metal guillotine. It's chopping stuff, ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk. And as he goes through the thing, the blade comes down, and then it goes to the chapter break. It's like, oh man, what's going to happen next week? And the next episode starts, and the guillotine comes down and just breaks on top of Captain Marvel, because he's freaking Captain Marvel, he's Shazam, right? And you're like, oh, right, yeah, I totally forgot. I was expecting something different there. Just glorious.
Cool. All right. Well, hopefully Brian will come back soon.
Yeah.
We'll see. All right, moving on. Core Earth. There was a discussion of a Core Earth Cosm and Big Book adventure. Mm-hmm. It appears from comments on the forums, which I will look at Deanna on that the Cosm book has been pulled. Are there any plans to give the Core Earth the full Cosm treatment? For example, each Cosm is getting 10 additional Cosm cards. Will we be seeing any of that kind of special treatment for Core Earth?
So the future is always in motion, but the current plan is, yeah, we'll do Core Earth. But when we do the Core Earth book, year 2, so that we can roll the whole line forward the year finally and not wait another 4 to 6 months to finish out the year and get into the next phase of the story. So we will do Core Earth, but it'll probably be year 2 Core Earth.
Alrighty. Moving on, back to Nile Empire specifically. John Ellison asks, the Nile Empire is a rich gaming environment and fan favorite of the original game. I'm looking super forward to all the source material that will become canon in this updated edition. Can you give us a few details about some of the more nefarious villains? To be honest, I found the Day One villains to be less Nile Empire and more Venture Brothers. I know it's hard to ride that line between Heroes of Yesteryear and Indiana Jones. Will there be grit in addition to the madcap?
Yes. So, I think anyone that thinks that Brick Knuckle Bronco is madcap has not been punched in the face by him. I mean, that and plus he's pretty much the dude from Indiana Jones that fights him in front of the plane, right? So there's always that mild element. You can treat it silly if you want to, but I mean, even Hooded Cobra, when I run him, I take him seriously as a villain, personally. We'll see those faces coming back, because one of the things that we wanted was some continuity, right? And if you kill them, all right, that's fine. It's the law of inevitable return. Either they'll come back. Yeah. But we've also got a ton of them, so if they stay dead, you've got new guys to replenish them moving forward. Brian's back and Deanna's here. They can talk about some of the villains.
So so Brian and Deanna, give us some hints at specific villains that you're going to be introducing.
So probably sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The one I like the most, a team, and it's the Triumvirate, and they appeared on the scene relatively recently. And they are Conundrum, Dr. Fear, and I don't remember. Deathhawk? Deathhawk, yes. So they all have a pooled, their possibilities are pooled because they are connected in some fashion that I don't really want to spoil right now. So we're going to just leave that one because I kind of I want to see the reactions when people actually read.
You actually get to see their origin in the Fires of Ray adventure. Although it's not specific. If you read their character block in the book and then play a certain part of the adventure, if you connect the dots, you're like, oh, that's okay, gotcha. But yeah, they're pretty cool. I'll speak for Brian because his connectivity is bad. I actually really like Mirage. She's a mummy sorceress that's come back, and she's got a little bit more of that gritty feel to her. We've got Iron Crocodile coming back. Greg, you want to talk about your villain from your day one, your Delphi mission?
Oh, well, again, it was partly an homage to Ray Winninger. So my villain is a studio director putting together these serial adventures that happen to really resemble the adventures that the heroes are going on, and so the heroes kind of need to know what's up. And he is larger than life, Janus Challenge. He's just nothing is more important than the next picture he's going to shoot, and so the violence sort of stems from that.
Awesome. I see a lot of Iron Crocodile love. He's definitely one of the villains in Fire of Ray.
Yeah. I actually have a fanboy question, if I could.
Is this an in-joke that we need to know about?
No.
Is this going to be like in a Dinos Adinos thing?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
No.
Uh,
Actually,
no.
would I be able to
Ray is a
answer the
drop
question?
of Golden Sun. Ra is a lot more than that. That's how you remember. Sorry, Greg. Did you have a
just
comment?
because when I was reading over the Nile Empire source book, both as a player and a designer, I found the Nile engineering and the redux of the religion a heck of a lot of fun. So how did you come up with your approach to that, Deanna?
I'm not really sure. I mean, see, part of the problem is that I actually got assigned the Nile Empire 3 years ago, and I wrote like half of it about 2 years ago. And there's been a lot of times where I look at it and I go, I have no idea why I did any of this in that manner. But for the engineering and mathematics, I basically said to myself that we need to have them be interesting and useful and thematic. And I figured that I could make them the specialists for a certain thing, for the mathematicians and stuff to do with buildings, not necessarily building buildings, but exploring buildings for the engineers. That would at least open up the possibility that we could make something interesting out of this.
Right, because the physical demand of it is it's got to be player facing. It's got to be something that you can take and is worth your spells and your perks, and it's like, okay, from that perspective, how do we do this? And there was even discussion like, do we drop the engineers? Like, is this something that exists in the backstory, but we don't expect an engineer hero? But Deanna was tinkering with it, and I'm like, no, actually, they've got a place. They've got a pretty cool magic set that we can do.
So, plus, I'm a physics major, so I realized a lot of weird crap I could stick in there just from harmonics and stuff like that. So,
all right, that sort of brings us. I'm going to skip, since it's relevant to that discussion, to Kent's question. How much of the Gizmo creation rules carried over to Torg Eternity?
Now, it's not Gizmo or gadgets. But realistically, it doesn't matter which one it is because it's very little.
Okay.
As interesting as the original gadget creation rules were, it's a little much for the type of game that we want to do. A lot of that is there was a lot of that the original into that, while it enhances the background for sure, it's not as useful at the table. And so that's sort of where we came with that. And actually, ultimately what we did was we said gadgets or powers and just sort of went and did that. But there are rules for doing gizmos in the game, and they went actually through quite a bit of development. And even the preview that I think I posted a preview for gizmos, it's not like that very much.
Always
it changed. Yeah, so but it is the thing that I wanted, the guy who likes MacGyver, that he would take that thing, that
right.
book.
Because the old ones were awesome, right? But they were awesome for, like, I've got an hour to sit around and make this diagram and do all this stuff. But and this is one of these things, as a general movement that games have taken, is a lot of people don't have as much time as they used to. So that's one of the things we had to choose with Torg Eternity, is to streamline or not streamline. And we're going to try and take like the elements from the original version that we love, and at the very least reference them and sometimes Easter egg them, and anything that we can capture within the grammar of the new game, we will. But at the same token, one of the promises that we made early on is we're not going to add on like entire new subsets and ways things work for the new one. The core book kind of tells you how powers work, and we can add powers, but we're not going to add schematics and things like that. But we'll encourage people to use them.
So would that, do you think, cover this, or is there anything else? Were there any powers from the old Nile book that couldn't be translated to Torg Eternity, and why? Is that pretty much it? Just the sort of gadget focused?
No, there actually were a few, and I think it was mostly the ones that came out later in the run that were a little bit more supers than pulp. And we kind of made the decision that we weren't going to do any of the ones that really started to lean into the superheroes trope as opposed to pulp stuff. And I think the closest we came, we said Flight is about the most superish thing that we're going to do.
Well, right, because you got the Sky Marshals and the Rocketeer and all that. You got to have Flight. Pretty much, if they were doing it in 1930, we were going to do it. But we draw the line at like Human Torch, Android Human Torch. We're like, all right, that's too far. We got to be on this side of Human Torch.
Sure. All right. It looks like we've got Brian. While we've got you, I want to make sure that we talk a little bit about Relics of Power.
I can only type if I have to.
All right. I am super excited for the new Relics of Power adventure. I understand that it is meant to be on the cusp of alpha clearance, so it can easily be rolled over to beta clearance. In trying to plan the pacing of my campaign, I'm wondering exactly what this means. Does part 1 transition into beta halfway through, end with the Knights reaching beta, or just have suggestions on how to make it a beta adventure? So
I'll have to leave that.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Darrell, because you're the one who came up with that.
Well, we've already got a guide out, essentially. So it's, what it comes down to is, there's easy alpha and there's hard alpha, and this is going to be like hard alpha. So if you're we wouldn't recommend it as a starting campaign. Like, that's what we've got other stuff for. But as people have determined through play, there's, with the exact same power set, a skilled group can blow through something that a novice group will just get completely killed by. And so it's going to be scaled for an alpha clearance thing, but it's going to be on the harder side of that, and also fairly easy to ramp up. And we've already done one of the things that we did in the Living Land, the beta GM primer. There's a lot of advice on that for scaling stuff up, and we'll make sure it's available as a download or something. So anyone who missed that can catch a hold of that. And so, because really, you don't magically become way tougher at 55 points. It's a scale that goes up, and so it really comes down to where your player's skill is at, and are these fights challenging them. And as a GM, it can be really interesting because you can feel like, oh man, they're not challenged, they're blowing through this. And then you talk to them about it and they're like, oh man, I was on the edge of my seat and I was really worried. And you're like, oh, well, okay, never mind, I don't have to change a thing. So that's going to be a flavor to taste thing, and we'll provide that spice for you guys to do that flavor.
And I think the other thing too is that this is more, it's narratively, it's going from the first year to the second. Like, this is, and the way that I've sort of looked at it is year 1 is the first act of a movie, and this is the thing that takes us through the first act into the second act, where we start throwing grenades into the status quo, pretty much.
The status quo of the invasion. Yeah.
Well, there is a certain status quo at year 1, and then we're going to blow it up.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. This one isn't on there so much, but I do want to talk also a little bit about Fires of Ra and sort of where that fits power level wise, narratively, where does it fit in with other things?
So I would call it similar in that it's slated for alpha, but it's a tougher alpha, right? Because you've got a lot of pulp villains and the opportunity to use many more.
Yeah.
Like we've got a strong bench, basically 9 villains, and if you want to, you can have all 9 of them active at the same time on that. So that's flavor to taste, essentially.
Is it roughly equivalent narratively and power level wise to the God Box?
I'd say it's a little tougher than God Box. Like early God Box is not that difficult. Late God Box gets tougher. This one picks up right around, like, again, you can do it as a 0-point character. It's doable, especially if you know what you're doing. But yeah, you have a little bit of luck, but you probably want a little bit.
Good cards.
But you'll probably want a few points going into this one to feel comfortable.
Thinking about the Delphi missions, certainly the first round of Delphi missions was, they've been the first 2 sets of those have been. There's a lot of variety there. What did you tell people, Greg? What did Darrell tell you about this round of Delphi missions?
Well, he told me personally to try to maybe not produce one that was quite so large. I didn't quite make the mark. No, he just said pick the part that you love about the Nile, and what appeals to you, and write that. And so for me, it was sort of the origin of the Nile personally that I could then do a representation of in the novel, plus toss in a little twist or two because it's serial adventure. So I suppose he had the same spiel for everybody. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the other ones because I enjoy running the Delphi missions as con events and stuff. They're perfect for that. And plus I didn't have to write them, so it's even better.
The other funny thing about the Delphi missions is that I don't actually usually get a look at them. And so often there's a situation where after they come out, I look at them and go, oh, so that's what I have to do to bring it into continuity now. Okay.
That's a lie. It's a filthy lie. You've got access to all of this stuff.
Well, yes, but I don't necessarily take a close look at them.
Yeah. Okay.
You can.
I can.
George Anderson says First Walk was awesome. I agree. First Walk's the one that I run at conventions. That Greg wrote. Love it.
Yeah.
So
since I live in this area, it was a little bit surprising to see a familiar location. I had no idea that Greg lived in the same basic metro area. So I was like, gosh, how does he know about this thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do lots of online research.
Right. Well, that's something we want to push on all the Delphi missions. Is part of the magic of Torg is, yes, we've got the Nile Empire and this awesome setting, but it's invading real places. And the other half of that equation is the real places. And so on Living Land, we were really pushing people write it where you live, right? So you can get that local perspective. Now we don't have as many authors who live in Africa to be able to do that. But we don't have it's not zero, So one of my favorites in this one is the Hyenas of Harar. So one of our authors, Camden Wright, his ancestry comes from Ethiopia, and so he could really write to that as the adventure, bring out some local flavor that you're just not going to get, from online research only, if that makes sense. So that's exciting to me. We're hoping to do that more and more. In all of the books, especially Cyber Papacy, we've got some plans. In Isle, we know a few people.
Has anyone noted that the new map of Year 1 of Nile Empire overlaps with a certain fictional country from Marvel?
funny story about that.
Yeah.
So, and this was something that we talked about early on, when Black Panther came out, and everyone's like, "Oh man, do we have this represented?" And I was like, we don't need a Wakanda, right? Like, that's what the Nile Empire has always been, right? The Nile Empire is towards Wakanda. That always has been. So, no, we don't need a Wakanda within there. That's what the Empire is. We just,
No, it's amusing to me that the extension southward does mean that it now overlaps. Sort of related to, as we're just kind of doing an overview of all the books, I want to get this question. Can you share any more, Daniel asks, can you share any more info on what stories will be in Kraken Tales?
Oh.
Looking forward to more fiction that I can use to draw my players deeper into the world.
You guys speculate for a minute, and I'll pull up the list and just tell you.
So I know that the Shane's rewrite was the first thing that we announced. So that was the first big one.
Yeah.
So that's going to be very interesting with the true ending with the shroud. Which when I read about that, I don't know about anyone else, but thinking about other inspirations, my mind went to Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, where at the end of the movie they show all of the actual reveals of how they get out of, because if you're not familiar with the movie, Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid is a collage movie that Steve Martin did. And he used actual movies, these various famous serials. I'm getting echo. I don't know where. But he used these famous serials, and throughout the movie, you see all of their cliffhanger endings, where the heroes of those various places get trapped, and then at the end of the movie, it shows all of the reveals of how they got out. And it's that I was just thinking.
It's a movie that I did not think was funny until I'd seen all of those other movies, and then it was hysterical.
Yes.
So the stories are Dead End, The Carnival Voice, Bill Slavic, Cry Havoc, John Terras, Crocodilopolis, and The Land Below from Stuart. Those are the five that are in, and we've got stats for some of the big bosses, creatures, and important things in them. That's, I think, the thing a lot of us are excited about is adding some stats. So it's yes, there's fiction, but there's also stuff you can use at your table to boot.
Yeah, and if people didn't know, these stories have also been lightly edited to make them fit the current canon,
the current continuity, right?
Yeah, I mean, and most of them really did not require very much, surprisingly.
Yeah, but it's mostly cosmetic stuff, right? Like the dome.
Yeah,
you don't want to be reading it and have your player go yeah, what's with this dome? And you're yeah, there's no dome this time around.
Yeah, we did have to reject a couple of options because it was just way too. It would change the story completely if we had to edit it. But one question, Darrell, is did you end up adding that certain simian that we had talked about to?
Yeah, I'm going to start. Even though Unground does not appear in the Land Below story, I'm going to have his stats there. People ask about it. I think that'd be a cool thing to add. So yes, we'll do Ungrash.
Alrighty. Okay. Getting the next one. This is a quickie that I will answer. Carl asks, when will I be able to buy Torg from my friendly local game store again? I was never able to get dice from them, and I'd like to be able to buy holiday gifts from them. They're out and unable to get more. I can't say that we'll get it before the holidays unless that holiday is Chinese New Year. But
distribution is hard, y'all.
You can certainly order the dice from the web store. But in the meantime, feel free to have your store contact feedback at ulyssesnorthamerica.com, and they will help you coordinate retail sales. So yeah. Okay. Deanna, will Near Now News be returning, and when will we start seeing living campaign for Torg Eternity? Well, the first part is you.
Yes, yes, it will. And actually, I've been sending out some tweets the last few days. I haven't been doing it every day, but yes, most days for the rest of the campaign, we will be doing the events in the Nile Empire through the first year of the war.
So as for living campaign, as far as I'm concerned, that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah. So the Infiniverse, it's so living campaigns the way they've been done in the past. Like for people who think about other product lines and the living campaigns that have happened, they're not practical anymore. Certainly not with this company, because we're distributed everywhere, and we don't have dedicated staff that could manage, like, I'm going to collect all the information from all of these conventions.
But we kind of do that, right? So this is something that Greg pioneered with the original Torg, right? Like, Greg, was there anything before that fit that niche?
I think we were sort of simultaneous with the RPGA stuff, but I don't know that there was a company-run one slot. And, I doubt many had like an 8-foot by 10-foot map in their office with push pins and string. So we were
Google map now, a little easier
for your gaming. So
yeah. So the jump that we've done forward, we use the Google Maps. We use the survey, basically Survey Monkey surveys, which someone asked earlier in the campaign where are the living land ones, and it's like, oh man, I got caught up in this. I will get those surveys out, because those do power the adventures as we go forward. Like what villains got survived our day one adventures mattered for Fires of Ra, right? And likewise, how things work out in this is going to matter for year two.
Yeah. So in that way, we do have an online map, Michael, but we don't have little red blinking flashes. I guess
that's my fact.
But okay, Brian's just going to type. So if we have questions for him, we can include him, and he can feel free to read the chat along with us for that. Yeah, the one that goes past 90 days will not be released online until we get to that point, as far as I understand, right, Darrell?
Yeah, well, so we might do it before we finish all of the Cosm ones, because we previewed the maps in the beta book.
Right, that's true. So we could prep the overlay.
Right. Now there's going to be some changes that happen in them, but
that's the problem, is that there's always little tweaks that we've been making to serve certain story elements.
Yeah.
That we've decided that this has to take place somewhere else.
Yeah, well, and also the community, right? Because like your glory stories, like we're like, oh, there's a bunch of stuff happening here. Well, we're going to charge that up.
So the what we may be able to do is, as we get into about the midway point of the Cosms, we can have a layer that is sort of tentative, saying this is about what year one looks like, pending final results of all the stuff that you do between now and then.
Yeah, Michael Diamond, that glory result tracker. So this is something that I wanted to do, but we haven't technically found a good way to do it. But what I really wanted it to be was, so we'd have that map with the zones, and we've got the named zones, so we can tell, as part of the glory things that come up on there, like, oh, this happened in the New York zone, bam, bam, bam. And we could do a cool bulletin of the crazy glory events that happened there, and then people with the storyteller perk could use those to empower their perk and say, well, no, this happened in this zone. This energy is here. I can push that around. But and I know people are using those names, and that's great. And we're capturing it. I haven't found a good way to mechanize getting that output back out. And something we'll always think about, but getting the game books out comes first.
I've got another question, if I could.
Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
go for it.
Because one thing, you have the Gen Con events that sort of impact the world.
Mm-hmm.
So what if in a future Kickstarter, because I know I go to local conventions and conventions, other Torg people go, if we created a more living campaign style stuff, but only around those con events, and they're part of a future Kickstarter, there might be one way to reduce the load while increasing the number of people who are directly getting trickle-down effects on the campaigns.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
All right, then I'll put some thought into that.
Cool. Yeah. Great.
I mean, Burden of Glory, which was the one from Gen Con a couple of years ago, did actually impact what happened in the Living Land source.
Yeah, and still our super secret one from last year and the next one.
I think
even more. Yeah.
That'd be a reasonable step to expanding the influence before we can fully mechanize and still get some of that.
Today I literally edited some stuff in the source book that came from the Gen Con adventure this year.
Yeah. And one thing that we did with Burden as well is Gen Con, and we counted them as more votes, essentially.
I'm just posting that since several people are asking.
Oh, there we go.
When are we going to release last year's Gen Con adventure?
Usually it'll be around this year's Gen Con. We're kind of there's like a 1 year gap, and we do. What I was about to say is we do run those adventures sometimes at other conventions, and we will count the activities in those too. We always count the Gen Con one as more. Essentially it's like counts as 10 playthroughs essentially, but within that year gap, we'll maybe do that, maybe not. Like actually, right now, I don't have anyone scheduled for the Death of the Mystery Man. I don't, so I'm not running that one anymore. That was a solo, but I did Burden of Glory a couple times.
Okay. All right. Let's. We've got a few production. Oh, this is.
That was a hell of a game.
So yes. A few production questions that I'm going to go through fairly quickly. Jay asks, given the amount of people playing over Roll20 and other virtual tabletop software these days, are there any plans to release maps and or tokens for upcoming Nile and otherwise published adventures in digital format without things like labels and GM's notes on them for easier use online? Or perhaps even releases as full-blown integrated adventures in the Roll20 marketplace?
Roll20, this is firmly in Deanna's ballpark.
Yeah, so I've been kind of keeping and we have not talked a lot about future stuff for Roll20. The biggest problem, I think, is going to be demand. We did do the drama deck for Roll20, and the unfortunate thing is that there's just not that many people actually playing it on Roll20. The sales on that were not great. So I don't know what we can do, because it does take quite a bit of time to actually do these, put these up into formats.
Yeah, the if we're going to do something like that, that's so the map packs, the PDFs for the map packs, you will notice, come both gridded and ungridded, so you can throw them into Roll20 fairly easily, or any virtual tabletop. So having icon packs, but maybe the ones that we would sell through drive-through. That might be something we could do where they're more generic rather than through the marketplace.
And I will say one of our maps that does have like trapped places on it we do have both a player-facing version in the book, and then in the back there's a GM-facing version that has, what the true path is through there. That's something that Brian set up, and I think it's a really cool map. It's like really cool map. So looking forward to seeing it now.
Yep. Okay. More production questions. That's a Kickstarter question. I'm going to put those together in a moment. Okay, Pascal asks, I'm a bit confused about the plans for Relics of Power. Will we get a multi-act adventure per Kickstarter with a hardcover book once we unlock all the acts? So in the end, there will be multiple Relics of Power books, like in the original trilogy. Or will we unlock one or more act per Kickstarter, and when the final act is unlocked, we'll get one book with all the acts? And then if there's enough interest in this product, where was that?
Yeah, my current plan is unlock the acts, then do a printed book. That makes the best sort of bang for the buck sense for both us and the audience. But always in motion, is the future. So if we get a lot of demand for the smaller paperback ones, we could. I prefer, putting it out in a format really similar to everything else we're doing.
Yeah. So how many? Brian was saying how many acts per part? Should we tell them?
Gosh, I don't
know how many we're going to do this time, but it's the future ones that I don't know. I don't know how fast we can get them out. Yeah. But for this one, there is the potential.
Yeah.
And
sorry. No spoilers. We'll hit 2 acts for this Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Unless things go seriously crazy, like wrong, we'll hit 2 acts. Win this one, no problem.
You mean have obstacles thrown at us?
Right. Yeah. Something surprisingly, stops it. But essentially, we're built to where I think it is based on our tracking. We can assume we'll hit 200,000, and if we hit 200,000, we'll get 2 acts, no problem. And
we are, by the way, as of right now, over 150.
Hey, thank you all. Thank you so much. My target is 2 acts of Kickstarter, and I think by the time we get 6 acts, we should be ready to do the book. That's what I think. We'll have to decide. Right, and that's it.
So with the caveat that things can change, because this is a preview product, there will be changes. We're going to do it such that acts can be done as a full adventure.
Right. We're going to do breaks between each for sure. Yeah.
Right. And there will be a narrative reason why you wouldn't be continuing past that. But once the full book is in, there can be a quick sequence of all of the acts. Now, right now, we've got it listed as 7 acts. So we've got 2 acts for the first, 2 acts for the last, and a 3-act middle. I don't know how that's going to work out for the Kickstarter, but we might end up making that 4 acts in the middle. I don't know.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. I've been trying to convince Darrell to do 3 acts for the next one, but we'll see if we're able to do that.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we'll see how it works out.
Yeah.
I mean, since for the Kickstarters, it's a digital product, you can promise whatever you want.
True, but we do still have to deliver it. So.
Yeah, we still have to write it.
Get to work, Brian.
All right. All right. Patrick, Mystical Eclipse from Living Lands. Will they be available in other Kickstarters or as purchases later? Could Kickstarter, that's first question. Second question, could Kickstarter participants submit adventures as a competition and the best gets published in that form, in the form box for that adventure? So first question is yes.
Do we have them on the web store yet?
No, because I can't put them on the web store until I have not the Kickstarter fulfillment, but the actual retail stock.
So
which we don't have.
But we should soon, and when we do, those will go up on that. We're also offering in the Kickstarter, like you notice in the add-ons, I added some specific ones relevant to this Kickstarter, and then I think we're going to add a "I'll screw it, here they all are" option for that for people that missed them, because it's like so many things, like they don't sound that cool, and then you get them, and I knew once people got them, the samples, they'd be like, oh, these actually are cool, I do want them.
So then on the acrylic token question, will there be just John Christopher asks, will there be just the one new acrylic token pack this Kickstarter? Two. Any plans for a Torg themed token holder or card holder? Took a look at PAX Unplugged this week and couldn't find anything that would work with the almost 500 tokens between the Living Land Kickstarter and this one. That's not taking into account the acrylic tokens for future Kickstarters so on.
So one of the items that we were considering as a stretch goal on this one, and we kind of couldn't get it worked out, so it'll probably be next Kickstarter that we do it, but we want to do a tray insert for the big boxes that you can put in, and they'll have spaces for cards and tokens and things like that. So look for that on Isle, if we can get the design figured out.
Yeah, because certainly other people have been doing Kickstarters that involve specialized boxes and have gone through a lot of extra. I'm just thinking of the Sentinel Sentinels of the Multiverse big box and the time they spent on that.
We did skip over the second part of that one question, which was the contest for adventures. And I don't think we'll ever do contests like that, because we don't want to open ourselves up to having people submit a bunch of work to us that they may or may not get compensation for. Like, if you're doing something for us, we want to pay you for it. And if not, we're going to tell you, we've got this thing called the Infiniverse, where you can put your stuff up and get paid for it. Absolutely. And, shout it to the mountain, please. That's what we want to do. In fact, one of the reasons I wanted Greg here is, like, he's doing some Infiniverse stuff. Shout it to the mountain.
Yes, well, we'll definitely have a pitch at the end where you can mention all of the things that you've put on the Infiniverse exchange.
Yeah, but we don't want to like kind of bring in a lot of unsolicited, like, give us your story ideas, and then we'll write something suspiciously like it later. No, we won't do that.
Yeah. And there may be things either within or even separate from Kickstarter that I may suggest we do as community building with the Infiniverse exchange. There's a lot that we can do with that platform. And it doesn't have to be we should explore that model, not just stick to, what does this do for our next Kickstarter? It's, what does it do for the Infiniverse exchange?
I see John Ellis is asking, what's Greg doing in the Infiniverse?
All right, well, let's go ahead and ask Greg right now. Greg, what have you done for
a back burner project, and my more active project is one I've play tested at conventions, basically set in, once again, Oregon. But it has 5 cosms involved in intrigue around. There's a little spit of land that the Living Land reality barrier just excludes a core settlement, a core town. So that becomes the center of resistance, but it's of more interest than just core Earth resistors. It's of interest to people who just want to mess with Vertica's plans on the West Coast. And then there's a large MacGuffin, which is, the tagline is, so what happens when a darkness device dies? Because there's another cosm involved that so this is the result of what happens when a darkness device dies.
You can tell we're really excited about it too.
So what town is
that? A little more than I could chew, because it's going to turn out to be, a little bit long, but yeah, I'm getting there. So I'm pretty excited. I finally solved my stupid open source mapping problem that had plagued me up to like 3 days ago. So that's like, yeah. So I won't be violating any user licenses on anything. Very excited.
So Greg, what town is
this in? Coos Bay, Oregon.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
The funny thing is with you mentioning that there's these near misses is I've been asked before, and I think there was a town in North Carolina that's right on the coast, and it's like, did you intend for that to be there? And it's like, no, I just missed it.
Well,
to me,
I took advantage of that.
That's part of the fun of finding stuff again, is those near misses and those things that didn't quite make it become strategic opportunities within the story. It's like, of course they'd be exploited. So who's going to exploit them? Well, in my case, everybody. And so it's just, I'm just having a good time.
Yeah, I mean, I did the same thing when we were looking at the One Shot podcast when I set up the adventure for that, which maybe I'll put together for the cyber papacy at some point.
We might have a Delphi slot.
There's a resort town in Spain that is just not in the cyber papacy.
Yes. That will require research, right?
Yes. Because we're not going to Jim Butcher this. Sorry, I live in Chicago, so I gotta. Before I get to the next question, John Cahan just asked any hints on the names of future Cosm boxes.
So look for the treasure box and look for the Shadow Reliquary.
Which brings us to some Kickstarter questions. Given that UNA will now allow Kickstarters and delivery to overlap, what's the cadence of releases you would like to occur from now on? Even at 2 realms per year, that's another 2 years to get the Year 1 material out. Not a complaint, more interested from a pacing my own campaign standpoint.
So with Living Land, we promised that we would not start this Kickstarter until we had fulfilled. You note that we have not made that promise this time. I actually think we're going to turn this one around much faster, like 3 months, so that we will be able to kickstart it 4 months later without any problem. I would expect 4 months between Kickstarter. So almost 3 a year. There'll be it essentially is every 5 months it's happening because 4 month gap, 1 month Kickstarter. So nearly 3 a year. So within 2 years we hope to be done with all of Year 1. Is the plan, but always in motion in the future.
So Jay, sort of, there's several questions along those lines, just about Kickstarter pacing and how to do adventure pacing. There were also a couple questions that were on John's question earlier. So what kind of things can we look for to fill in that space?
Right. So part of that is why we wanted to do the beta clearance primer when we did, because like the beta clearance was originally conceptualized as a Year 2 product, and then we realized we just can't wait for Year 2. Like people are going to need that stuff way earlier. So we're going to get a lot of that material out in the preview form. Again, we did it in the last Kickstarter. We should probably do that as a web download, a free download for people, especially the GM one and the player one, just so they've got those options available. And with each Cosm book, we're adding a lot of beta specific perks. We're adding a lot of beta and gamma and delta monsters. So yeah.
Okay. So I've got a few flavor questions that I want to hit before we wrap up and do that. Sorry about my cat. She does that. Other folks, Darrell and Deanna will be familiar. All right. So here's a fairly specific question from Dave Haynes. My nephew wants to play a space opera character. He's a big Star Wars / Trek fan. He said that we would find out more about the Akashans and the Relics of Power. Is there any way we could get 3 or 4 archetypes from the stat sphere included?
I think that's a strong possibility. Like, I don't think we'll have them in this set of acts, but they're coming.
Yeah, the story does involve the Akashans, and I do use that term specifically because we are to some degree getting away from the spaceship part of what.
Right.
It's probably more like Stargate as opposed to Star Trek, where a cosm of their own, and then they were exploring. But that stuff, some of that stuff will get revealed in this adventure.
Yeah.
And actually, I will say that we did say that that you will experience the space gods. Sorry, I did it. There we go. The Akashan reality, and you will actually get that in the first 2 acts.
Yeah, and
Very cool.
yeah, and so Michael Diamond's kind of laughing out there. The secret, not secret, is we've had an Akashan on the Delphi Council since day 1.
Yes.
They're not dead. They're just not going to fulfill the same role that they did in the first war. And those of you that have gotten a chance to download The Burden of Glory have gotten a pretty strong preview of what happened to them, but not necessarily what that's going to mean for their return in the Relics of Power.
Yeah.
But you also know that something's after them. So if they're coming to Earth, it can't be good.
All right. Keiju Matsuoka asks, for Japanese Torg players, the Nile Empire is the most popular cosm. At the same time, there are many players who wish to make Japan's comicalized hero appear in the Nile Empire. Do you have any possibility of transforming from the worldview of pulp novels to the worldview of colorful comics?
As far as I'm concerned, pulp is a fairly universal thing, right? Meaning we have our notion of pulp from 1930s stuff. But man, I've seen the green bamboo pulp wuxia that came out in Shanghai and stuff like that. That's still pulp, right? It's a very different feel, but absolutely. And Terra's a big planet, right? They've got all sorts of different nations and stuff there. So all of those influences could be felt from Terra coming forward into the Nile Empire.
And who knows, some of our vigilantes and champions might, in fact, create archetypes along those lines.
Right.
I'm pretty sure we have a couple Japanese backers in those in those lists.
Absolutely.
And I will say, too, is that a lot of these things that might be a little bit more specialized, they are really good ideas for putting into the Infiniverse. Because part of the reason we might not be doing that is that we're just not familiar to really do it justice.
Yes, I would certainly love to see some of that theming in the Infiniverse exchange.
Yeah.
It'd be super good. And I left sort of the big question for the end, actually. Could have started with this one, but I decided to end with it. In a few words, what are the fundamental changes you made between the previous Nile Empire sourcebook and this one?
All right, so mathematics and engineering probably are the biggest mechanical changes. Seen already because the pulp powers, you've pretty much seen what they are in the core book. In the Nile Empire, in the source book, we've got more powers. We go into a little bit more gadgets are like and what pulp sorcery rituals are like and stuff like that. But the mathematics and the engineering are probably the ones that are most different from the original for sure. The the Omatism is a little bit different too, story-wise. It's
The whole Egypt
evil. Yeah, it's what if Egyptian mythology was evil, or most. And I mean, just because of the difference in mechanics, the way that the priests work for that is a little bit different as well. I mean, we do still have astrology. I just went into astronomy as a career, so I did have a little bit of an issue with that term. But the astrology in the Nile Empire is still there. It's just more supported by perks as opposed to something you actually have to do. You generate a test to cast a spell. But other than that, the thing about the Nile Empire that was difficult was that because it's so, I didn't want to mess it up, and so there was a little bit of threading a needle on trying to take the things that didn't work so well before and make them work now, retaining at least the flavor from some of the stuff that we're not doing. Like, for instance, there's a gizmo kit, and a gizmo kit has possibility capacitors in it. They don't really do anything, but it's still there. It's still in the setting. Well, I mean, they don't do anything specifically.
I would say just from the read through I was doing, that one of the things, like I said, the Omatism, the engineering, the mathematics, and some of the tone shift in there. So you still have all the over the topness, but there's a question earlier about, is there gritty? I'd say the emotional tone is that you can have grittier, low-level stuff, but there's enough nastiness just built into what you've done with religion, what you've done with society, that you can sort of feel, as a game master, I can easily adapt things to what I call friction. So the characters do have just a little bit more difficult time when they're not leaping from building to building. So you can get a grittier type of story if you want to go that way.
Well, and the funny thing with Omatism is that when I looked at the original Nile Empire to see what they actually did with the Egyptian religion, I realized that it wasn't really necessarily strongly. Let's put it this way: I think some university professors probably would have some issues with some of the things, but at least that was my impression. And so I realized was that, well, if it's already kind of off what ours was, then I can do it off as off as I need it to be. And so once I got some ideas for certain gods for being there or not being there, Osiris is not a god in Omatism. The other gods killed him. Well, 3 of them anyway. But and some gods that are
one person in the history of Terra that just doesn't come back from the dead.
Well, so far. Like there is an eternity shard that might change that.
Yeah. And one of the overall things, because like Deanna was saying, it was our most popular cosm. It was our favorite cosm. Like almost everyone working on the project, you ask them what their favorite cosm is, and it's Nile Empire, right? Because it's so evocative, and you don't want to, don't touch it, you'll break it. But the one thing that we tweaked, I think, non-mechanically, was again bringing up more of the local flavor that this is Africa being invaded.
Yes.
Not 1930s New York. So that's like the one little twist that we've put in it, is trying to bring that out more. Like, no. There's something here that this is landing on top of, and we want to hit both those elements because they're both important.
Yeah. And in general, I think that's one of the strengths of the Torg Eternity approach is really bringing that global feel in.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little hard to get the Living Land because it's North America, but you might have gotten a little bit of for how we handled Mexico, and you'll see how we're dealing with the Congo and with the Middle East. And I wanted to make sure that, I mean, this is taking place in a world where in a place where people actually live right now, and
Yeah,
it
we
should at least acknowledge that part to a significant degree.
I see. Nicholas says the cool concept for Nile or Terra would be the John Carter treatment of Mars. That was actually something in the old Terra book. They had Martian invasions in Terra back in the day.
Yeah, Martians are not in the Nile Empire this time because it just...
Yeah, we're not going to Terra during the war. After the war, all bets are off.
Yeah, and that I earlier about the like actual and we are going to focus on what happens on Earth right now. There's enough of a mention of sort of, because you need a little bit of background on what happened on the Cosm originally. And I think I was just thinking for the cyber papacy, we've got something I think that's kind of neat. But it's not going to be much more than a page or page and a half.
There's the
book.
And that was a big change for Isle. Like when we were talking about the design side, like our initial outlines were all based on the old book, all talking about the old Cosm. And we're like, that didn't work then, and it super won't work now, right? Because we're fighting the war here on England, Norway, and Finland. We need to know what's going on here. We don't really hear what's going on back in the island, other than how it's impacting here. So that's kind of a new filter that we're passing things through.
All right. So those are all the questions that we have listed.
And I saw a bunch of fly in the chat, and I apologize for those of you that I missed.
Yeah, I think we did catch a number of them just by typing responses, so I think we're mostly good.
Brian got us covered there. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah. One thing Brian did add as far as on the question of what changed, he mentioned there's a tweak to the backstory that dramatically expands the number of ruins and ancient mysteries.
Never was.
Joseph, I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, was Quinn the only one to come over from the old Torg universe?
What makes you think
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
From the original Torg universe?
What do you mean? I mean, who would have followed him? Who would possibly he be specifically fighting? Darrell, I don't know.
That's one of the few that I'm actually not going to just like drop the camera down.
All right. Anyway,
put myself some rope on that one.
So yeah. Let's go ahead and do a wrap up. And so let's start with thanking everyone for being here. I want to thank our guests and give them an opportunity. Brian, you'll have to type if you want to say anything. Greg, do you have anything you want to add? Any thoughts or interesting comments you want to?
I would just say I'm happy to be back and fiddling with this stuff. And the Nile Empire is a great place to play. So I enjoy my time in the adventure. And look for. I've got one off the top thing which I'll talk to Darrell about later that I might want to do. But I want to make sure I'm not going to make him slam his head into the headboard or something.
Whatever, do it. It's awesome. Signed. Go forth and do.
All righty, Deanna, you'll have to fit that into the continuity.
Yeah, let's not be hasty.
Get to work, Deanna. Figure it out.
Deanna, do you have anything to add?
No. Well, not really. It's just that this. I'm really excited that this is coming out now. I mean, like I said, I've been working on this on and off for 3 years, and considering that 4 years ago, I was just hoping that I'd be able at some point to do part of an adventure or something like that. And then when George Strait said that he didn't have time, so did I want to do the entire book? And I said, yes! So yeah, I'm really looking forward to see what people think.
Cool. So yeah, my two final thoughts are: one, thank you everyone. We're well ahead of where we want Kickstarter, which is huge. Thank you all so much. Means we're in a good trade to keep doing this for as long as we can. We're in it for the long haul to get that out. So we appreciate you all coming and watching, being invested in this game that we all love. And then the second thing I was seeing in the comments, people were talking about Mobius fighting himself or other versions of himself. And I'm like, no. Mobius' ambitions are far larger than himself. He's aimed at the Gauntlet. He will never accept second place.
Although that said, with that in mind, you might want to read the cracking tales of the Nile Empire. I'm just saying that there might be something about that in there.
And yeah, so definitely I appreciate everyone coming out to our chat. Thanks for all the great questions. Even the people who could not be here, we definitely appreciate that. I will be posting this on YouTube, and of course it'll be archived on the Kickstarter. But yeah, we hopefully we'll do at least one more of these before the end of this campaign. This time of year is a little tricky.
We'll definitely
we'll do what we can.
We'll definitely do one for the end too, and we'll get Brian's technical issues resolved, so you guys can hear more from him. Because he's a strong voice in the Nile Empire and Torg going forward.
Yeah, we didn't really get to talk about Fires of Ra too much, so.
Yeah, so Kenneth Anderson, the big thing that we try to do is when we, like we did with the Living Land, we did them at different times and different days of the week. So hopefully we'll catch you at a better time. Oh yeah, Wi-Fi maybe not.
Yeah.
Jace also thought it was Fires of Ray. I always heard the god was Ray.
No, it's Ra is the sun god. He is a fun god. Ra, Ra, Ra.
So yeah, so we'll try and catch up a little more on that maybe on our next time. But thank you again, and thank you to Darrell, Deanna, Greg, and Brian.
Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Yep.